Hello and welcome to the DrivingMaul Super Rugby 2017 review. I'm going to run through all of the teams and give you my grade out of A, B, C and D as to how they did compared to how I thought they were going to do at the beginning of the season. And if you see if I'm wearing my Placemakers jumper, if you've been following my predictions and played Punt for Prizes, then you could have won, just like I did, a whole bunch of t-shirts, shorts, fleece. I even won a patio gas heater, as well as a few other things like beer coasters and stuff. So if you want to know about that competition when it kicks off next season, I'll let everyone know on my newsletter list. So do click above and join my newsletter if you're watching on Twitter, or down below if you're watching on YouTube. So yes, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and no, I'm not sponsored by Placemakers, but I enjoy doing the prediction competition there, and I say I won a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, hey, do join in next year. So let's run through each of the 4 different conferences and how I think the teams did compared to how I thought that they were going to do. Going to start over in South Africa with Africa Conference 1. Now this finished up with the Stormers heading the conference up ahead of the Cheetahs, the Bulls in 3rd and the Sunwolves down in 4th. And because of that, looking at pre-season, I thought the Bulls were going to be the one taking this one out. So I think the Stormers getting into that getting to that quarter-final, beating the Chiefs in the regular season, I think that they got pretty much a B grade out of this season. I think they did pretty well overall. I think getting into a semi-final and winning a knockout game would have got them an A grade, but I think they can be relatively happy with their season. The Cheetahs, again, I've given them a B. You might say, hey, they've come second in their conference, surely that's worth an A. Yeah, it would have done, but being points-wise, they would have been much lower down in the other conference. This was a particularly weak conference, so yes, to come second in their conference is good, but to get that A grade, they needed a few more points than they picked up. The Bulls has to be a D. Here we are, we're talking about the team that's won the most Super Rugby titles in South Africa. They really should be punching much better than this. So I think that this was an absolute disaster of a season for the Bulls. So I give them a D for this one. They really need to get their act together, realise that how rugby has progressed, and that just kicking it and relying on set piece is not going to work. And defensively, they weren't up to it either. The Sunwolves, I'm giving them a C. I didn't expect them to win any games this season, but hey, they did pick up that win over the Blues at the end, even if the Blues were already on holiday. So, yep, I think that's they deserve a C grade for this season. Over in Africa 2, the Lions obviously headed up the conference and made it all the way to the final. The Sharks also got the wild card slot from the Africa's conferences. The Jaguares came in 3rd here, and the Kings at the bottom. For me, I think this was an A grade performance by the Lions. Having a home Super Rugby final was for the first time ever was great. Making this final for the 2nd year running also very good. And I don't pay any heed to all the comments that they didn't play New Zealand teams during the season. I don't think that really played much into it. So, yep, I think the Lions definitely deserve an A grade for that season. It's going to be interesting to see how they go next season with Ackerman moving on to Gloucester, and whether they can keep this this sort of fairy tale or good feel story going. They have grown very well, and it's interesting to see how much that's down to individuals and how much that's down to actual structures within the organisation. The Sharks, giving them a B grade. They made it into the playoffs, and obviously pushed the Lions all the way in that quarter final. Could very easily have got through. So I think they tied up that wildcard slot fairly early doors. So I think they deserve a B grade. Jaguares, well, a team that disappoints, hey? Supposedly it's effectively the Argentinian international team. They got that good run of wins at home early in the season, and then kind of fell apart. Losing at home to teams like the Force and the Brumbies, you've got to say, this was not. They also have learned some lessons. They've not learned enough lessons from their first season, and so I give them a C grade for this one. They were pushing with those early home wins. They were pushing for a final slot, but they didn't really get there in the end and fell away quite drastically. The Kings, I think the Kings deserve a B. Yes, they come last in their conference, but they put in some sterling performances, got some wins on the road in Australia, and I think, yeah, from what we thought of as being whipping boys in the tournament, they really have stood up and grown this season. So, yeah, cheers, well done to the Kings. You definitely deserve your B grade. Heading over, but on the whole, that order of the Africa Conference, I think it's pretty much as expected in the Africa Twos. Into Australia, and the Brumbies won this one, followed up by the Force. The Waratahs were in third, the Reds in fourth, and the Rebels down in at the bottom there. This really was not how I saw this conference shaping up. I thought the Brumbies had lost a lot of experience over from last season and would struggle with this being a rebuilding season. I wasn't expecting the Force to do anything. I thought the Reds had a fantastic or a very good squad on paper, but they really never got together. The Waratahs should always to be a team that's always challenging for the for the finals, and the Rebels I thought had a base to grow on, but they just fell apart. So this, in some ways, this conference really was flipped on its head compared to what I was expecting it to be. So the Brumbies, to make it into the finals, to top their conference in what I thought was going to be a rebuilding season, that's an A grade for me. Yes, I know there's going to be lots of comments here that they didn't actually beat any New Zealand sides and all of that kind of stuff, and were mid-table overall. But I think to top their conference in a rebuilding year is good work. The Force, well, they really have stuck it to people, haven't they? And I think they deserve an A grade for coming second in their conference. For a team that's supposed to be getting cut because they're not good enough, and has really, and so they want to strengthen the sides in Australia. You've got to say that is a very good performance by them. The Tars, well, I'm going for a C, and perhaps being generous, perhaps it should be a D. They really should be pushing for the finals. They never were, and to come third in what is a weak Australian conference is very poor from them. As I said, the Reds have a very good squad on paper, but they, admittedly, it was put together. They haven't played much together with each other. Even so, that's got to be a D grade to come fourth in their conference in Australia. Again, as we say, it's a weak conference, and they had some pretty poor results. And that's a D grade for the Reds. The Rebels, I've gone for a C. Perhaps that is being generous. Perhaps they should be getting a D as well, because they have had something to grow on, but they haven't done that. And they did push to get towards sort of the upper end of this conference over the last couple of years, but really fell away and were woeful this season. That just leaves us with the New Zealand conference to round things off. The Crusaders, obviously the champions. The Hurricanes came second. Chiefs in third, Highlanders in fourth, and the Blues down there in fifth. The Crusaders winning away, the only team ever to have won Super Rugby finals overseas, and done it for the second time, and the first time ever a team that has crossed the Indian Ocean to win the final. You've got to say the Crusaders have been A class this season. I must admit, with a new coach, I wasn't expecting them to be able to do this, but yep, Scotty Robinson has done a great job there with all his break dancing and everything. Hurricanes obviously lost out to the Lions over in Joburg. I think they deserve an A grade. They've pushed the Hurricanes all the way and beat the Brumbies, and then lost in the semi-finals away. I think there's no shame in any of that. I think they had a good season, and I would give them an A grade. The Chiefs, I'm also giving an A grade for. Actually, they had a whole bunch of injuries, made a semi-final, got knocked out by the eventual winners, had to travel across the Indian Ocean twice during the finals. So to me, I think they've had a good season. It's going to be interesting to see how they go next year, obviously with Dave Rennie going, and also a whole bunch of players as well. Cruden, Lowe in the backs, also Hicko Elliott, I think the hooker, isn't it, going as well, and I also think Leach might be leaving as well. So a bunch of the sort of stalwarts and leaders in that team are leaving, so it's going to be interesting to see how they go next year, but I think they deserve an A grade considering all the injuries that they had and losing to the finalists. Highlanders, I thought they would be higher up than this, but I still think they deserve a B grade here, losing out to the eventual champions. They had a decent season. It's always a tough conference, and so I think the Highlanders deserve a B. The Blues, yes, they haven't beaten another New Zealand side. They did lose that game to the Sunwolves, but by then it didn't really matter. They were already on holiday, so I don't think that result counts. They did beat the British and Irish Lions, but that's not really Super Rugby. But even so, that's still part of their season. In any other conference, the Blues would have got themselves into the finals, and because of that, I think they deserve a B grade, even though they have come bottom of the New Zealand pile. It's also where I expected them to go. I didn't expect them to make it into the finals. I always thought they were going to be there. So, but they, whilst they are there, they also got good results along the way. So that's how I think each team did compared to pre-season expectations. We'll be talking about it with Mike from Real Mike Pullman, Will from Rugby Numbers, and Simon from Gainline Analytics tonight in the Hash Rugby Chat YouTube show and podcast. So please sign up, or please do join us for that, or subscribe to the podcast to watch that, or to listen to that. Sorry, we'll be going through all of those to get all their opinions as well as we go into greater depth over the full hour. So thank you for watching, and I will be obviously we've got Currie Cup action going on at the moment, so do look out for those predictions as well, and let me know your thoughts.